Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Listen, the pressure is on David Stearns right now, and everyone knows it. Mets fans are showing up at Citi Field with signs demanding changes, spelling half the words wrong, but making their frustration crystal clear. The front office understands this roster isn't finished. They know there are holes that need filling before spring training arrives, but way too many people seem to think the offseason is over, and the Mets are just going to roll with what they have. That's not happening, not even close. Here's the reality David Stearns is facing. If he puts together a team that misses the playoffs this year, his job security becomes a legitimate question. You don't get unlimited chances in New York, especially after the kind of money Steve Cohen has spent. Stearns has had a mixed track record so far, outside of landing Juan Soto. The offseason heading into last year was pretty rough. The trade deadline was questionable, but then he had a great run getting the team into contention. He's 1 for 2, basically, and now he's looking to go 2 for 3 with this current offseason. What Stearns did best in Milwaukee was consistently put together competitive teams every single year. Some people criticize him for doing just enough to compete, but never quite enough to win a championship. But let's be real about something. He was working with a Milwaukee payroll that was nowhere near what the Mets have available now. Winning championships is incredibly difficult. The Dodgers are the Dodgers, and then there's everyone else trying to catch them. It's not easy to just assemble a championship roster and expect everything to fall into place perfectly. The fact is, Stearns is going to put together a competitive team that should be able to win and make the playoffs. That's the baseline expectation. But people need to stop acting like you can just defer money on everyone like the Dodgers do, and suddenly you're a dynasty. The Dodgers situation is unique. What they've built isn't easily replicable across the league. What's really interesting right now is watching how Stearns has demolished the old core. He moved on from players that a lot of fans loved, but there's still money to be spent. There are still quality names available on the free agent market. Names we talk about constantly. The Mets absolutely need to add an outfielder. They need to add a starting pitcher. Honestly, they probably need another first baseman too, because I'm not convinced Oswaldo Cabrera at first, every day with Mark Vientos as your DH, is the optimal setup. The Mets need to figure out how to move on from Vientos and get value in return. Whether that's packaging him for Luis Robert, trading him for starting pitching, or including him in a deal for a first baseman, they need to extract major league value from him. This team has to stop carrying one-dimensional players. They've already started that process by moving on from Starling Marte, letting Pete Alonso walk, and trading Mark Vientos. They need players who can do multiple things well, guys with some speed, good defense, the ability to play multiple positions. Flexibility matters because injuries always happen. David Stearns' job is to address flexibility, versatility, finding switch hitters, bringing in clubhouse leaders, targeting players with postseason success, and balancing all of that to create both a brand new roster and a brand new personality. This is the first step in establishing a new era for the franchise, and that matters tremendously moving forward. I know there's a portion of the fan base that keeps saying Francisco Lindor drove out Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, and Pete Alonso. You need to stop saying that because it's genuinely one of the dumbest narratives floating around right now. Lindor had absolutely nothing to do with those moves. Let me break this down quickly because apparently some people need to hear it spelled out clearly. Brandon Nimmo got moved because of his contract, because the front office didn't view him as a true leader because he's aging past 30 and likely to break down physically. Pete Alonso's contract demands were astronomical. The Mets weren't giving him $155 million to eventually become a designated hitter. Jeff McNeil, literally nobody on the planet wanted to trade for, so the Mets needed to dump that contract however they could. Edwin Diaz wanted to go to the Dodgers specifically. If you genuinely believe Lindor and his wife's political views somehow drove all these players off the team, you need serious help. David Stearns wanted to move on to a new era. He's done exactly that. Now let's actually see what he builds before jumping to conclusions and demanding he get fired. Give him a legitimate chance to finish constructing this roster. One name that hasn't gotten much attention but should absolutely be on the Mets' radar is Ranger Suarez. He's a lefty with legitimate postseason success. We're talking about a pitcher with a 1.48 ERA across 8 playoff starts over multiple seasons. He's won a pennant. He knows how to perform when the pressure is highest. That matters in New York more than almost anywhere else. Suarez brings consistency and proven playoff performance. My guess is his asking price has been too high, and teams are waiting for Scott Boras to bring that number down to something reasonable. The reality is we're talking about a guy with genuine playoff credibility. Here's the catch, though. He's a Boras client, which means Boras has been asking for the moon, and his client might not actually get anywhere close to that number. The interesting question becomes, what does that contract eventually look like? If the number comes down to something like 3 years at $25 million per season, similar to what Sean Manaea got with some deferrals included, I think the Mets become very intrigued. Adding a lefty to a rotation that currently consists entirely of right-handers except for David Peterson, who only has 1 year left on his deal, makes a lot of sense strategically. The Mets are probably thinking Suarez would give them a proven lefty and a winner. And if it gets down to 3 years, I think they seriously consider making that move. Kyle Tucker is another name that keeps coming up, though he's represented by Excel Sports Management, not Scott Boras. Tucker has obviously been atop the free agent market all winter, but market conditions suggest his contract could come down significantly. It genuinely feels like Tucker's deal could end up being something like 3 years at $125 million or in that range. With the lockout looming and teams being hesitant about long-term commitments, Tucker's market has stayed surprisingly quiet. Would the Mets be interested at 3 years? I think they absolutely would be. Kyle Tucker is entering the prime of his career, though I'll be honest, I think he's a bit overrated. I don't really view him as a $45 million per year player when you actually break down his numbers compared to other options available. His only season with the Cubs saw him post worse numbers in certain categories than Jordy Alvarez, who the Mets just signed. Tucker will turn 29 in January, so he's still in his prime theoretically. He's won a World Series with the Astros. He's been to the playoffs multiple times and has 9 postseason home runs. He can steal 30 bases and potentially put up a 30-30 season, though he's never actually hit more than 30 home runs in a single year. What's intriguing about Tucker is he gets on base consistently and doesn't strike out much, which I know the Mets organization will absolutely love. He's never struck out 100 times in a season. He had a .408 on-base percentage last year with a career mark of .358. He walks, he'll hit 20 to 30 homers behind Juan Soto, he'll drive in 100 runs, and he'll steal 30 bases. He does a lot of things well. Tucker's a good defender who's won a Gold Glove and been a 4-time All-Star. I just think the Mets need to be careful because there's a legitimate question about whether he can handle New York pressure. That worries me more than his on-field production. But if it's only 3 years, I'd probably do it. What do you think? To be completely honest, I like Cody Bellinger more than Kyle Tucker for this team. Something about Bellinger's moxie, his winning pedigree, his consistency and longevity appeals to me more. Bellinger would probably cost less than Tucker too, which gives the Mets flexibility to address other roster needs. But for 3 years, I'm definitely intrigued by what Kyle Tucker could bring to this lineup. The reality is David Stearns still has work to do. There are legitimate options available that could significantly improve this roster before opening day. Whether it's Ranger Suarez stabilizing the rotation or Kyle Tucker providing that elite outfield bat behind Soto, the pieces are out there for Stearns to acquire. The question is whether he'll be aggressive enough to pull the trigger on the moves that push this team from competitive to legitimate contender status. The Mets need to add talent, they need to add depth, and they need to establish the kind of roster flexibility that allows them to weather the inevitable injuries and slumps that happen over a 162-game season. Stearns has the resources, he has the backing from ownership. Now he needs to execute and prove he can build a championship-caliber roster in New York with the kind of payroll most general managers only dream about having access to. This offseason isn't over, not even close. There are still impact players available, still trades to be made, still opportunities for Stearns to reshape this roster into something special. Mets fans need to be patient for just a little longer and let this front office finish what they've started. The pieces are coming together, even if it doesn't feel that way right now when you're checking transaction wires every morning hoping for news.